Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction thriller film, Predestination. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the last century in the United States, Hawke is a time-traveling agent whose job is to travel back to the past through the time-traveling device to prevent the terrible crimes and terrorist attacks before they actually occur. One day Hawke takes a new mission and travels back to 1975, trying to prevent a bomb blast planned by a so-called fizzle bomber, a vicious criminal who is responsible for dozens of bomb attacks, claiming lives of many innocent people and causing immeasurable economic losses. When Hawke locates the bomb and tries to disarm it, the fizzle bomber suddenly shows up and has fierce gunfire with him. Though the fizzle bomber runs away, Hawke doesn't have enough time to disarm the bomb, and the bomb explodes before he can seal it up inside the explosion-proof drum, causing his face to be seriously burned. While Hawke is in great pain and is trying to reach the time-traveling device meters away, someone approaches and helps him grasp the device, which then transports him to a hospital in 1992. After having a facial reconstruction and passing the psychological test, Hawke is then permitted to return to his work and is given his last mission. Hawke then travels back to 1970 in the guise of a bartender. One day, when Hawke is on duty, John, a column writer of some renown, walks in and starts a conversation with him. Under the influence of alcohol, John begins to talk about his miserable and dramatic life. John tells Hawke that he was actually born female and grew up as Jane in an orphanage. In 1945, the baby Jane was left on an orphanage's doorstep. A nursing worker took her in and sent for a doctor, who identified John as a healthy female baby. Jane excelled in all her studies, even in physical strength. However, she had great difficulty fitting in with the others, and was treated as a freak. She was really lonely, but had no one to talk to. These sufferings lasted till Jane was 18, when she was offered a chance to go to space. Jane decided to give it a shot at once, as she had always been fascinated about the space. She successfully passed the interview, and became a member of a space exploration program. Later, Jane and the other chosen girls were given a series of physical training and mental tests. Though exhausting, Jane enjoyed it a lot, as she believed she was gonna embrace a new life. However, things didn't go as Jane thought they would. She was disqualified from the program after a fight with another girl. However, Jane didn't know the real reason was due to her medical condition, which was found after that fight incident and had never been revealed to her. In order to survive, Jane worked as a nanny, while at the same time, she went to the nighttime college. Just as she was about to plumb the depths of the miserable life, she bumped into a man who said he was waiting for someone. The two held a long talk at the bar and fell in love with each other soon. Jane thought he was the man she was going to spend the rest of her life with. However, the man disappeared shortly afterward, leaving Jane at a total loss and in great pain. Someday, unexpectedly, the charge guy of the space program, Robertson, visited Jane at her house. Robertson told Jane that Space Corp was really a part of the temporal agency, which now wanted to recruit her to prevent future crimes. Jane was very excited, thinking there was a new future waiting for her. However, later she was found pregnant with the hormone hunter's baby. Robertson had to disqualify her again, and broke off contact with her. Later, Jane successfully gave birth to a healthy female baby. However, the doctor then told her that she was intersex with internalized male sex organs, as well as females. Moreover, the female sex organs were severely damaged during the cesarean section, forcing the doctor to remove them. So Jane was advised to undergo gender reassignment to live as a man. While Jane was hesitating, much to her shock, her baby was stolen by a mysterious man. Jane was heartbroken, but could not find her child anywhere. In despair, Jane took the surgery and began to live as a man, under the name of John. In order to make a living, John has tried various kinds of jobs. He finally found his pursuit in writing, and life began to grow better. After hearing John's sad story, Hawke is very indignant about what John has suffered. He offers to take John back to the day when Jane met the hormone hunter, who ruined her life, so John can take revenge on the man and change his future. Hawke explains to John that he is a time-traveling agent, and then takes John to a hidden basement, where he shows John the time machine and takes John back to that day in 1963. John disguises himself as a passerby, waiting at the place where Jane's supposed to encounter the man, determined to catch the hormone bastard. Then, something dramatic happens. Jane, actually the female John in 1963 before his gender reassignment, bumps into John, who time travels back from 1970. John falls in love with her at first sight. At that moment, John realizes that he is actually the hormone bastard, who later becomes Jane's lover. However, John doesn't want to let Jane upset and disappoint, so he starts talking with Jane, and the two fall in love with each other quickly. While Hawke, who has witnessed all of that, tries to stop them at first, but decides not to after a long hesitation. Later, Hawke makes an illegal jump back to 1975 alone, without taking John back, trying again to apprehend the fizzle bomber. The fizzle bomber is setting the bomb when Hawke gets there. So Hawke draws his gun immediately, and has fierce gunfire with the fizzle bomber. However, the fizzle bomber knocks Hawke down in no time, and runs away. While Hawke is struggling to stand up to run after the fizzle bomber, he first hears the familiar sound of gunshots, and then a loud sound of a bomb explosion. He races to where the sound comes from, and finds that a burned man is struggling to grasp the time machine. Hawke is astounded by this familiar scene, where a burned man is struggling to grab the time-traveling device. Out of sympathy, he picks up the time machine for the burned man, who is actually his past self. After seeing the man traveling back to 1992, Hawke picks up a piece of the bomb fragments, and then travels back to 1964. There he encounters Robertson, who turns out to be Hawke's superior. He has traveled back to ask for the bomb fragment Hawke hid, and warns him to follow the rules, making no more illegal and excessive jumps. Robertson tells him that the excessive jumps will cause anachronism, resulting in unimaginable consequences, including psychosis. Then, Robertson urges Hawke to perform his last mission. While at that time, John and Jane already have their baby, who is born from the self-fertilization, as Jane and John are actually the same person. Though hesitating for a long time, Hawke, at last, decides to steal the baby, and uses the time machine to take the baby to the orphanage, 18 years earlier in 1945. By now it is clear that Jane, John, and the baby are the same person. Hawke then returns to 1963, trying to persuade John to leave Jane behind, and take John back to the year he's supposed to be in. John gets really mad at Hawke, thinking Hawke has fooled him. However, Hawke explains to him that everything is predestined, and that though he is the one who has facilitated the cycle, no one can really break it. Then he takes John to the temporal agency in 1985 by force, making John, the hormone bastard, suddenly disappear in the world of 1963. By now Hawke has finished his one last task, which is to bring back John to take over his job, whose name is then changed into Hawke. Robertson at once announces that Hawke is done with his mission, and is permitted to travel back to 1975 to enjoy his retired life. While in 1975, Hawke plans to settle down for marriage, and have his own children at first, seeing that as the new start of his life. However, he finds himself unable to get over the fizzle bomber. Therefore, he travels back, and manages to find the fizzle bomber at a laundromat, through the file of the bomber he brought back. To his great surprise, the fizzle bomber turns out to be Hawke's future self, who is now suffering from psychosis, due to excessive time travels. The fizzle bomber explains that he has figured out a way to save more lives from the predicted severe terrorist attacks, by bombing places beforehand where the terrorist attacks would occur. He insists that though it's at the cost of only a few lives, he's right in doing that. He tries to convince Hawke that the only way to put an end to the cycle is for Hawke to spare his life. Finding it hard to trust the old man's smelly bullshit, and unwilling to believe he'll become the insane fizzle bomber himself, Hawke chooses to kill his future self eventually, which ironically indicates that Hawke, by his choice, takes his role as the fizzle bomber instead, and the cycle continues. It's shown that John is actually the man who'd traveled to New York and was burned while disarming the bomb. His subsequent facial reconstruction significantly changes his appearance, making John and Hawke look not alike. By now, obviously, it's a huge predestination paradox, with different characters involved: Jane, John, Hawke, the fizzle bomber, and even the baby, but all being the same person. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Bye.